The appraisal phase includes which functions?
What?
I'm recording notes. I'm recording this.
Sorry, I thought my
that's
could
it.
do it for you.
No, she's done recording.
Forever?
Probably for a good while. She's tired of recording.
Okay, gotcha.
She's tired of the subject matter.
No, gotcha.
So the appraisal phase includes which function? Administration of exemptions. The use which physically possible, legally permissible, economically feasible, and maximally productive is called highest and best use. Which of the following is the best definition of an income producing property? Real estate that is purchased for investment. Standard 6 is the USPAP standard that covers mass appraisal, development, and reporting. Personal property is classified in the broad general categories of tangible and intangible. Cash equivalency analysis requires adjusting the sales price of a comparable when seller pays points on the buyer's new loan to provide the buyer with below market interest rate. The process of recording property characteristics in the appraisal district is called listing. The income approach to value may require an estimate of net operating income of property, translates the ability of a property to generate income into an indication of value, is based on the principle of anticipation. The 10% cap on appraisal increases applies to residence homesteads. The number calculated by summing the observations and dividing by the number of observations is the mean. Furniture, fixtures, equipment, machinery, and inventory are examples of tangible personal property. Which of the following best describes taxable values? Appraised value less the total amount of exemptions that apply. The value in the marketplace refers to market value. Which of the following is not tangible personal property? A deed of trust. Which of the following are exempt under state law? Solar and wind powered energy devices, implements of husbandry, and farm products in the hands of the producer are all exempt under state law. What term describes the use of debt capital to acquire an income producing asset? Leverage. Which of the following best explains the bundle of rights? The ownership of real estate endows the owning of a number of distinct and separable rights. The phase in which the governing body sets the tax rate is the assessment phase. Value is estimated based upon a specific land use for the property. That is the best definition of value in use. Income from property operations before expenses are deducted is referred to as effective gross income. Which of the following may be protested by a property owner? Actually, all of these can be protested by a property owner: excessive appraisal, unequal appraisal, and denial of exemptions. In most counties, the Appraisal Review Board must complete substantially all hearings and approve the appraisal records by July 20th. Personal property discovery is more difficult than real property discovery because personal property is usually movable. Full-scale reappraisal requires an appraisal district to develop time adjustments, redefine location boundaries, rebuild improvement quality categories, update schedules to reflect current market values. If a taxing unit wants to generate a levy of $50,000 and its total taxable value is $20 million, what tax rate must it impose? 25 cents per $100. The primary difference between potential gross rent and effective gross rent is vacancy and collection losses. Which of the following explains the theory of consistent use? The use of the improvement must be the same as the use creating the land's value. Mr. Jones' home has an appraised value of $100,000. The exemptions for his school district are $15,000. Are the $15,000 general exemption and the 20% general exemption. Let me start over. Mr. Jones' home has an appraised value of $100,000. The exemptions for his school district are the $15,000 general exemption and the 20% general exemption. The school district's tax rate is $1.10 per 100. What is Mr. Jones' tax amount? The answer would be $715. But you would first deduct 20% of the $100,000 and then $15,000 from that. That's $35,000, so that'll leave $65,000 that's taxable at $1.10 per 100. A normalized income stream defines net operating income. The loss of value in equal increments down to an estimated salvage value is straight line depreciation. Which of the following refers to a document prepared by the collector that shows the amount of delinquent tax, penalty, and interest due on a property? A tax certificate. In appraisal, to capitalize means to convert an income stream into an indicated value. Which of the following best describes an appraisal, or best defines an appraisal? An appraisal is an opinion and estimate of value arrived at by logical analysis of available data by an appraiser. An item that can be owned but does not fit in the definition of real property is personal property. Percent good is the percentage of a property's value that remains after accounting for depreciation. Which principle states that the value of property derives from the future benefits buyers would expect from the property? Anticipation. Replacement cost new is the cost to construct a building to equal utility. One source of generally accepted appraisal practice is the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, or USPAP. The primary distinction between traditional and yield capitalization is yield capitalization explicitly accounts for anticipated income over the specified holding period, while traditional capitalization or direct capitalization uses 1 year's income stream. An area of complementary land uses in which all properties are similarly affected by physical, governmental, social, and economic forces, or PEGs, is a neighborhood. In the income approach, value is income divided by cap rate. Which of the following does not make up part of a property's return rate? The mortgage amortization rate. So the following makes up the property's return rate: non-liquidity, management, risk rate, and safe rate. And all those add up to be the discount rate. How would one categorize the expense of constructing a new parking garage for an existing office building? You would categorize it as a capital expenditure. The economic life of an asset refers to the number of years over which an asset is useful. Below are descriptions of 5 appraisal errors. Which one does not arise from bias, or rather, the one that does arrives from bias? The appraisal error that arises from bias is where a field appraiser underappraises a property in neighborhood A because he fails to notice a new addition to it. That is not bias, that is just a mistake. Bias is land values are high in a neighborhood G. Bias is masonry veneer improvements are appraised at higher ratios than those with wood siding. A field appraiser consistently puts improvements in location A into quality categories that are too high. Small commercial properties on the borders of residential neighborhoods are consistently underappraised. But only that last one is not bias, because the appraiser made a mistake. He didn't notice something. Which of the following is an indirect cost? Engineer's fees. Direct costs are bricks and mortar, land cost, and carpenter's wages. Which of the following explains the expenses that fall under reserves for replacement? The cost of replacing short-lived items necessary to maintain current operations divided by the life of the items. Depreciation is best described as a reduction or loss in value from all causes. Which of the following is the first step in completing a reappraisal? Conduct a ratio study to identify areas of inaccuracy. Which of the following is a valid form of yield capitalization? Discounted cash flow. You notice that a roof of a single-family residence sags considerably and receive the owner's permission to inspect it from the attic. You discover that several rafters are broken. It would cost $12,500 to repair the roof. Repairs would then add $15,000 to the market value of the property. What kind of depreciation is it? It's curable physical depreciation, because it's curable because the cost to cure it is less than the amount that it would add to market value. The percentage of overall changes in a time adjustment equals to the amount of price change divided by the earlier sales price. You are using traditional capitalization to appraise a 10-year-old office building. On an operating statement, the property subtracts $140,000 spent to replace carpeting and repaint interior walls. What is the correct description of this expense? This expense would be disallowed because a prudent owner would have built up a reserve to cover it, and the reserve for replacement would be allowed. The basic general formula for establishing a gross rent multiplier is sale price divided by gross rent. Which of the following best defines net operating income? Potential gross rent less vacancy and collections plus net secondary income minus operating expenses. In the final step of the sales comparison approach, estimating the subject's value, what does the text state that you should not do in arriving at an estimate of the subject's value? Average the prices of the comparables to estimate the subject value. A reversion is a lump sum benefit an investor receives at the end of the holding period, and the reversion is calculated by taking the last year in the holding period's income, dividing it by the cap rate that's probably given, and that will give the reversion amount. Then that gives the value, and then you subtract the sales price, and after you subtract the sales price, that is the reversion amount. The fundamental formula used in the traditional income approach states that value equals income divided by rate, income equals rate times value, and rate equals income divided by value. Multiplying a property's overall cap rate times the property value tells you the amount of net operating income. Period of growth, stability, decline, and revitalization are all life cycles of a neighborhood. What is the best definition of economic rent? The rent level that represents the amount a prudent landlord would charge and a prudent tenant would pay. Any public meeting must be recorded by means of typewritten notes, or the agency's tape recorder is known as a recording. Any deliberation between a quorum members of a governmental body is called a meeting. Must have a quorum and a certified agenda be kept for a closed meeting. A public meeting requires notice of meeting with time and place and the agenda posted at least 72 hours prior to the meeting. All persons are entitled to full information unless access is denied under law under which legal statute. All persons are entitled to full information unless access is denied by law under which legal statute? The Open Records Statute. A request to the custodian of records may require the person requesting public information to provide a detailed description of the records requested is called an open records request. Information provided to taxing agency cannot be released if the law protects it under the statutes. It's the confidentiality. RPA stands for Registered Professional Appraiser. RTA deals with the assessment and collection of taxes. TDLR registrants must be guided by the principle that property taxation should be fair and uniform. TDLR registrants must not use information received in connection with the duties of an appraiser, assessor, or collector for their own purposes unless such information is known by ordinary means to any ordinary citizen. TDLR registrants shall not accept an assignment or responsibility in which the registrant has a personal interest without full disclosure of that interest. TDLR registrants shall not accept or solicit any gift, favor, or service that might reasonably tend to influence the registrant in the discharge of official duties, with the following exception: an item with a value of less than $50 excluding cash or negotiable, a political contribution as defined by Title 15 of the Election Code. The benefit is solely to defray the expenses that accrue in the performance of the duties. TDLR registrant shall not accept an appraisal, assessment, or collection-related assignment that can reasonably be construed as being in conflict with the registrant's responsibility to their jurisdiction, employer, or client. TDLR registrants shall not conduct their personal duties in a manner that could reasonably be expected to create the appearance of impropriety. TDLR registrants shall apply all laws, rules, methods, and procedures in a uniform manner to all taxpayers. RTC stands for Registered Tax Collector. TDLR registrants who violate the Code of Ethics are in violation of state law. TDLR is an acronym for Texas Department of Licensing and Registration. On the day of your examination, you must bring one valid form of government-issued classification. Mr. Smith's home has an appraised value of $100,000. The exemptions for his school district are the $15,000 general exemption and the 20% local option exemption, leaving a taxable value of $65,000. The school district's tax rate in this problem is $1 per 100. So what's his tax amount? $650. Which one of the steps is in the sales comparison approach? Make reasonable adjustments based on market information. Which of the following is not one of the types of government restrictions? Highest and best use. The government restrictions are eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. Miss Bailey Homes offers a 2,000 square foot home for $200,000. Few buyers choose Bailey Homes because Leonard Homes offers similar floor plans and similar quality of construction in the same neighborhood for $185,000, $15,000 cheaper than Bailey Homes. This principle involved here is substitution. The process of recording property characteristics in the appraisal district is called listing. In most counties, the appraisal review board must complete substantially all hearings and approve the appraisal records by July 20th. A new pool costs $50,000 to build. It increases the value of the property by $30,000, only $30,000. The principle that states that the pool's value is $30,000 is contribution. One of the duties of an appraisal review board is to rule on correction motions. Partial exemptions apply to what kind of property? Residential homesteads. Which step in the appraisal process does the appraiser identify the property? Definition of the problem. When we use the terms forces and trends, we are referring to general data. School taxes generally won't increase on this type of property if the owner qualifies for $65,000 or older exemption, a residence homestead. Which of the following may be protested by a property owner? Excessive appraisal, unequal appraisal, denial of exemption. A developer builds a new home in an area that has more homes for sale than are likely buyers. Sales are slow until the developer reduces the price. Which economic principle explains that situation? Supply and demand. One of the five key concepts in assessment is the taxing unit must follow a detailed set of steps to be sure its taxes are, and that was the end of the sentence. In making a final value conclusion, an appraiser will use judgment. Stability of currency is an example of which type of force? International. The list of taxable property developed by the appraisal district is called the appraisal roll after it's approved by the appraisal review board. Before it's approved by the appraisal review board, it's called the appraisal records. If values decrease and the tax rate does not change, the tax levy will also decrease. The term appraisal, when referring to a report, is a formal document that states the appraiser's value conclusion and evidence to support that. The final step in the appraisal process is the report. The appraisal phase includes which function? The administration of exemptions. The general residence homestead exemption is mandatory for all school districts. What is the comptroller's role in the property tax system? The comptroller's office checks the work of the appraisal district. The first step in the cost approach is to estimate value of the land. Which step in the appraisal process does the appraiser inspect the site? That is in the data collection and analysis step. If a building to property ratio is 60 and the property's value is $60,000, what is the building's value? So 60% of 60,000 is the building's value. The land value, incidentally, happens to be 40% of the 60,000. But anyway, 60% of 60,000 is 36,000. An exemption serves to exclude all or part of property value from taxation. Which of the following is a function of a tax unit to set the tax rate? A property sold 1 year ago for $64,000. It recently sold for $79,360. What's the monthly rate of appreciation? Monthly rate. So we take the difference, $79,360 minus the earlier sales price of $64,000. We come up with $15,360 divided by the earlier sales price of the $64,000, and that comes out to be 24%. However, question asks what is the monthly rate of appreciation, so we divide that 24% by 12 and we get 2% is the monthly rate of appreciation. The two major activities in the assessment phase is setting the tax rate and collecting tax bills. In fee simple title, the owner acquires which interests? Ownership of all the interests in the property is what the owner acquires in fee simple. A tract of land is best suited for development as industrial development. The principle that states that the property's value will be greater if put to this purpose than if it is developed for multifamily is called the highest and best use. The chief appraiser's list of taxable property is approved by the appraisal review board. What is the purpose of an appraisal? To produce a logical, believable conclusion concerning value. The person who calculates the taxes is the assessor. Force affecting the desirability of property in the market is what kind of force? An economic force. A notice of appraised value is the most common type of appraisal notice. A physical force is a force that acts on the physical condition or location of a property. Which entities participate in the property tax system? Well, that would be appraisal districts, taxing units, and government bodies. They all participate. When conducting the cost approach, the land is appraised as if it is vacant and available to be put to the highest and best use. A $65,000 or older property owner receives an exemption of at least $10,000 from school taxation. In considering the highest and best use of a property, the use must be financially feasible and physically possible. Appraised value may be different from either taxable or market value. Property refers to both legal rights and things in ad valorem taxation. A taxing unit files a challenge with the Appraisal Review Board to object to the exclusion of property from its roll. The list of taxable property prepared by the chief appraiser before the ARB approval is called the appraisal records. Which of the following refers to a document prepared by the collector that shows the amount of delinquent tax, penalty, and interest due on a property? That is a tax certificate. The 10% cap on appraisal increases applies to only residential homesteads. A private restriction might include a restrictive covenant. It is a crime for an ARB member to discuss which of the following with the chief appraiser unless an exception applies. Evidence for a protest. According to TDLR rules, a registrant must avoid investments that create a conflict of interest. A registrant must conduct his or her duties in a way that avoids the appearance of impropriety. Except in certain meetings, a chief appraiser is forbidden to discuss any matter relating to the appraisal of property with the CAD's board of directors. One of the types of discipline that the TDLR may impose on a registrant is a fine. The principles of conduct that govern a group or organization are often referred to as ethics. A registrant must do what with respect to a report issued by the comptroller under Section 5.102 of the Tax Code. A registrant must comply with all the recommendations in the report. According to TDLR rules, a registrant must avoid performing calculations that result in a predetermined rollback tax rate. According to TDLR rules, in performing calculations, a registrant must follow the written guidance of the Comptroller of Public Accounts. A registrant must not testify falsely, withhold information in an investigation, encourage anyone to testify falsely. A registrant performing an assessment assignment must apply generally accepted practices equally and fairly. In performing a consulting service, a registrant must comply where applicable with the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. If a registered Texas tax assessor collector accepts a job as a chief appraiser, she must notify TDLR that she needs to register as an appraiser. According to TDLR rules, a registrant must disclose in writing any outside employment. Within how many days must a registrant notify TDLR of an employment change? That would be 30 days, within 30 days. According to TDLR rules, a registrant must disclose in writing financial interests in what kinds of items within the taxing unit or appraisal district that employs the registrant. That would be real property. A registrant must apply property taxation rules and procedures to taxpayers in a manner that is uniform. For registrants, compliance with TDLR rules is never optional, it's mandatory. A registrant is forbidden to accept a benefit in return for favorable treatment. Two persons are related by consanguinity if one is the descendant of the other. One source of generally accepted appraisal practice is Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. Which of the following best defines the term mass appraisal? A systematic appraisal of a universe of properties as of a given date derived through means that can be statistically tested. The value in the marketplace refers to market value. Which of the USPAP standards covers mass appraisal development and reporting? Actually, both standard 5 and 6. That's what this says. Thought it was just 6. A mathematical expression of how supply and demand factors interact in a market as defined in USPAP is a mass appraisal model. The written reporting requirement for mass appraisal is the mass appraisal report. Standard 6 applies to mass appraisal reporting regardless of the purpose of or use of such appraisals. Mass appraisal is defined in USPAP as the process of valuing a universe of properties as of a given date using standard methodology, employing common data, and allowing for statistical testing. Which of the following best describes bias in appraisal practice? It's not allowed. That which is taken to be true as defined in USPAP is an assumption. Confidential information is information the appraiser receives from the client and is identified by the client as confidential and is not available from other sources. That which is contrary to what exists but is supposed to be true for the purpose of analysis is a hypothetical condition. USPAP defines an appraiser as one who performs valuation services competently and in a manner that is independent, impartial, and objective. A period of growth, stability, decline, and revitalizations are all life cycles of a neighborhood. Which of the following is the first step in completing a reappraisal? First, you have to conduct a ratio study to identify areas of inaccuracy. An area of complementary land uses in which all properties are similarly affected by PEGs, that is, physical, economic, governmental, and social, is a neighborhood. Full-scale reappraisal requires the district to develop time adjustments, redefine location boundaries, rebuild improvement quality categories, update schedules to reflect current market values. Value in the marketplace refers to market value. Which USPAP standard covers mass appraisal and development and reporting? Standard 6. In mass appraising, tangible personal property In mass appraising tangible personal property, USPAP requires the appraiser to identify and analyze the effects on use and value of industry trends, value and use, and trade level of personal property. Any public meeting must be recorded by means of typewritten notes, or the agency's tape recorder is known as a recording. Any deliberation between a quorum of members of a governmental body is a meeting. The market approach would produce the most accurate appraisal of which of the following: a vacant lot on the outskirts of a growing city. A 5-year-old roof cover with a total economic life suffers what kind of depreciation? Physical, incurable, short-lived. The value in the marketplace refers to market value. The property use which is physically possible, legally permissible, economically feasible, and maximally productive is called highest and best use. Cost schedules typically reflect replacement cost new. Values in your marketplace are declining at a rate of 1.5% per month. You have a $75,000 sale that took place 3 months after the date of appraisal. What's the sale price adjusted for time? So if it's declining, the amount of value on the date of appraisal would be higher than what it is now. Or 3 months after. So since it's 1.5% per month, you take 75,000, multiply that by 0.045, and you come up with 78,375. An improved property recently sold for $100,000. The land component of the property is worth $25,000. What's the land to property ratio? That would be 1:4. You would take the sale price divided by the land component to get that answer. A property sold 1 year ago for $64,000 and recently sold again for $79,360. What is the monthly rate of appreciation? $79,360 minus $64,000 equals $15,360 divided by $64,000, and that equals 24%. But since it's monthly, divide by 12, that equals 2%. Which of the four methods of cost estimating is used when estimating the cost new of partially complete structures? Unit in place. The gross income multiplier method differs from the gross rent multiplier in that it considers primary income and secondary income. The basic general formula for establishing a gross rent multiplier is sale price divided by gross rent. The percentage of overall changes in a time adjustment equals the amount of price change divided by the earlier sale price. A duplex in the appraisal district sold for $156,800. Each side rents for $700 per month. What's the indicated monthly gross rent multiplier? We take the $156,800 divided by the sum of both sides of the duplex. That comes out to $1,400, and so your GRM is 112. So 156,800 divided by 1,400 equals 112. Properties in an appraisal district are appreciating at 2% per month. If a property sold 6 months ago for $60 $60,000, what's its current value adjusted for time? So 60,000 times 1.012 will give you 67,200. Examine the following property: its replacement cost new, actual age, effective age, and total economic life. You have RCN of 75,000, actual age of 5 years, effective age of 2 years, and economic life of 40 years. What's the amount of age life depreciation using effective age? So you take 75,000 times 2 divided by 40, and you get $3,750. You're appraising a 3-story office building constructed 15 years ago. You estimate the RCN of the improvements at $250,000. The building has a total economic life of 50 years. Actual age is considered equal to effective age. Based on the information, what's the amount of the depreciation? Well, $250,000 times 15 divided by 50, that equals $75,000. You're appraising a rent house that is located next to a noisy intersection. The property rents for $425 a month. A comparable rent house that is not influenced by the noisy intersection rents for $450 a month. The appropriate monthly GRM is $134. The land to property, this is key, the land to property ratio for these properties is 1:4. So how much value does the subject improvement lose to the problem? So that's 75% of the value. So the answer would be 2510. I think you work this out. I think this is what I did before. You work it out as 425 times 75% times 134, and 450 a month rent times 75% times GRM of 134. I think it's that way. Might have to work it the other way. 425 times 134 times 75%. Actually, they'll come out with the same answer. But the answer is 2510. You're appraising a 20-year-old office building that was recently remodeled. Before remodeling, it had an effective age of 25 years. After remodeling, it has an effective age of 10 years. RCN is 200,000. The building's economic life is 60 years. Based on this information, what's the building's depreciation? So RCN 200,000 times 10 divided by 60. That is $33,333 in depreciation for the building. A small strip center was constructed near new in January 94 for $250,000. The cost index for January 94 is 1060.1. The cost index for January of the current year is 1481. What is the trended historical cost as of January of the current year? Well, that's easy. You take the newest index of 1481, divide it by the oldest index of 1060.1, and multiply that by the original cost of $250,000, and you get $349,260 as the answer. Replacement cost new, RCN, is the cost to construct a building to equal utility. The building to property ratio in an area is 4:5, which means land is 20%. A single family residence sold for $125,000. So what's the value estimate? So take $125,000 times 20%, $25,000. A lot in an industrial district recently sold for $400,000. The lot has 200 feet of road frontage and is 200 feet deep. Those two factors don't matter in this problem because it's asking what is the value estimate of the front half of the lot using the 4321 method. So that's 40% plus 30%, 70% times 400,000. You get 280,000 for the front half value. You know that a typical land to property ratio in the subject neighborhood is 1 to 5. 20% for each part. You have appraised the improved property at 130,000. What is the land value? So 20%. Land makes up one part. 20% times 130,000 is $26,000. You are appraising a vacant lot in a built-up neighborhood. A comparable lot with 3-bedroom, 5-bath house on it recently sold for $90,000. You estimate the RCN for the building to be $95,000. The improvements depreciation is $25,000. Well, the whole thing sold for $90,000. So part of that's the land, and that's what we want to value. What is the indicated value for the subject lot? So our RCN for the house is $95,000, but the depreciation is $25,000. So 95 minus 25 is $70,000 for the RCNLD of the improvement. Subtract the $70,000 from the sale price of $90,000, you get $20,000 for the value of the land. Which of the following best explains the bundle of rights? The ownership of real estate endows the owning of a number of distinct and separable rights.